I'm not standing up here alone. And I thank God for that, because I couldn't do this on my own. So I'm going to be exploring this question of why God, and it's out of Habakkuk chapters 1 and 2. Before we do that, let's go to our mission statement that we'll share that, because it's important that we remember this mission statement, because it is what we are to be about. And God's led us to this mission statement, and every time I think, maybe we've said it enough times or whatever, I see other things that God shows me that reinforces this statement, that this is ours from Him. This is what we're to do. And so when that happens, it's like, okay, we need to keep saying it, that we know, that we don't forget. Because we forget. You ever forget things? Yeah, I won't tell your kids. That's what Larry always tells me when he forgets about something. He'll tell me, well, don't tell the kids. I'm like, well, it's okay. So let's share our mission statement together, because our mission here at Fellowship of Wesley Chapel is to share the redemptive love of Jesus Christ by equipping our congregation to be ambassadors who bridge the gap between the world and God. Share, equip, bridge. Thank you. So as we move into Habakkuk, Trent made the comment, he said, I don't think I've ever heard a sermon preached out of that chapter. And I don't know, he must have been sleeping, because I've taught on this before at one point or another, but he was probably little. It's been quite a while. So Habakkuk is one of the minor prophets out of the Old Testament, and he's a prophet in the time just before the rise of Babylon overtaking the southern kingdom. So the northern kingdom has already fallen to the Assyrians, just to kind of set this in history. And then you have the southern kingdom that is still independent. Josiah dies shortly before there, so maybe right as Habakkuk is beginning to be a prophet. So you're in this time period. There's about a 25-year period as Babylon rises up from a local power to a world power. They end up conquering the Assyrians. They end up conquering the Egyptians. They end up conquering Judah. Most of us know that story. And then you go into the time of captivity for all of Israel. So this is where that's at. But if you look at this, it starts, Habakkuk is asking questions of God. And they're serious questions. They're bold questions that he's asking God. They're not, well, why is the sky blue? I mean, that could be a very serious question, depending on what you're wrestling with, but it's questions about what he sees in the world around him. As he looks around and he sees things that aren't right. Things that are going on in Judah, not just other parts of the world, but right there at home. And this to me seems very relevant. We can look in the world around us and be asking these exact same questions. Why does it seem like evil wins? Why does it seem like evil is growing in the world around us? And some of you are going to say, well, it's getting better. And I do think it's getting better. There's improvements that are going on in our country and our world right now. But you still, if you honestly ask yourself, have you ever wondered those questions? It's probably yes. So in chapter 1, starting in verse 1, this is a message that the prophet Habakkuk received in a vision. So this comes in a vision that he receives from God. So all of this interchange is him sharing about what he saw in this vision, okay? So verse 2, how long, O Lord, must I call for your help, but you do not listen? To me, that's a pretty bold question of God. Continuing, violence is everywhere, I cry, but you do not come to save. 3, must I forever see these evil deeds? Why must I watch all this misery? Wherever I look, I see destruction and violence. I'm surrounded by people who love to argue and fight. Verse 4, the law is become paralyzed, and there is no justice in the courts. The wicked far outnumber the righteous, so that the justice has become perverted. Doesn't that sound like something we could say today? Each one of these. Why do we see so much violence in the world around us? Why do we see so much evil? Why does it seem like the courts don't have an answer for it? Because they don't. The courts don't have an answer for it. They don't have an answer for this misery that's going on in the world around us. They're chasing consequences after things happen. The courts have no power to stop it from happening. They're only applying consequences afterwards. And I love this line, I'm surrounded by people who love to argue and fight. Isn't that what we see all the time? You watch TV, you watch the news. You know, we unplugged when we went on vacation. We didn't watch the news at all. No, none of it while we were gone. It was different, and it was good. Not that you shouldn't be informed of what's going on in the world around you, but it was so nice to just unplug from that, to just live. See the beauty of what God had created, experience that with the family, and the things that we did together. What an amazing thing. But Habakkuk, he's looking at his country, the country of Judah, and he's seeing these things in God's people. He is not talking about necessarily the rest of the world outside of Judah. He's talking about right there in his own lands, in his own people. People that are supposed to be the chosen by God. This is what he sees. And he's asking God, why? Why does it seem this way? Why do I see this? Why am I experiencing this? Why does it seem like you don't listen? That's pretty bold. I think it's pretty bold before God. And in verse 5, he sees the Lord's reply. This is all in this vision, right? So he's hearing and he's seeing all of this. He's experiencing it. You ever have a dream that seems so real? When you wake up, it's like, takes you a few seconds to figure out that you're not where you were in your dream, that you're at home in your bedroom, or asleep in the lounge chair, or whatever, wherever it is that you fell asleep, right? Yeah, it's like that. It's that real when God brings these kind of visions. So verse 5, the Lord replied, look around at the nations, look and be amazed. So God is telling him, turn your eyes a little farther out. See what I am doing. Because he's not inactive. Look around at the nations. Look and be amazed. For I am doing something in your own day, something you wouldn't believe, even if someone told you about it. Well, someone is telling him about it. The Lord's telling him about it. But the Lord's doing the impossible. That's what he's saying. Look and be amazed at what he's doing in the world around you. It's like, I am working on these things that you are asking me about. It's just not happening the way that we expect it to happen, or the way that Habakkuk expected to see it happen. He expected to see that being handled inside their nation, inside of individuals, for them to be called back to the things of God. And that he would see that change, that they'd be restored in their relationship with God and in their righteousness by doing the right thing according to God, following the law. And I don't mean the public law, I mean the law of God. So look around and be amazed, he says. Verse 6, I am raising up the Babylonians, a cruel and violent people. They will march across the world and conquer other lands. Now stop for a minute and ask yourself, He's replying with this, I am raising up the Babylonians. Remember, this is in response to what Habakkuk has asked. Why is all this evil going on? Why are you doing nothing? God says, I'm not doing nothing. I'm raising up the Babylonians. I'm raising up the Babylonians, a cruel and violent people. They will march across the world and conquer other lands. 7, they are notorious for their cruelty and do whatever they like. Verse 8, their horses are swifter than cheetahs and fiercer than wolves at dusk. Their charioteers charge from far away. Like eagles, they swoop down to devour their prey. 9, on they come, all bent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert wind, sweeping captives ahead of them like sand. 10, they scoff at kings and princes and scorn all their fortresses. They simply pile ramps of earth against their walls and capture them. 11, they sweep past like the wind and are gone. But they are deeply guilty, for their own strength is their God. See, the Lord, in replying to Habakkuk about what he's not doing, is the Lord says, I am doing something. I am raising up the Babylonians. And they're going to bring violence. They're going to bring cruelty. They're going to bring destruction. Does that take you a minute and kind of stop you in your tracks for a minute? Habakkuk is asking, why are you allowing all this evil to go on in Judah? Why are you allowing these people to mistreat one another? Why are you allowing that to go on and seem to grow like evil is winning? And the Lord says, I'm sending the Babylonians. To me, he's saying, I'm sending the punishment for exactly what you're asking me about. This evil that's going on in what's supposed to be my own people, the Israelites. Now, it's only part of the Israelite nation because they were divided between the northern and southern kingdom. That split's already happened. The northern kingdom has already fallen to the Assyrians, right? But you have Judah that has been a holdout because for the most part, they have remained more true to God. Their kings have remained more true to God. Not all of them were good, but more of them were good than were bad. But then, what many consider to be the last good king in Judah, he dies. He dies on the battlefield. And things change. And the king's not so good. And this evil's growing. It's growing in the world. But do you understand that when God is pointing Habakkuk to the Babylonians, he's saying, I've already been working on the answer to the question that you have. To what you accuse me of not listening to, I am already taking care of. Because the Babylonian Empire started to raise up many years before that, in about 630 BC. Well, Habakkuk is writing sometime between 612 and 589. Remember, it's BC, so the closer we are to today, the numbers go down, okay? So 630 is before 589. We're counting down to the birth of Christ, right? So God knew what was needed, and he is already working to raise up these Babylonians 20 years almost before. Oh, see, God already knows. He's already working and moving. He's putting things in place. But don't miss that he's saying to Habakkuk, I'm going to use an outside force. I'm going to use the Babylonians. And I'm going to answer your question. I'm hearing you. I'm seeing the evil, and it's going to be punished. And punishment's coming in the form of the Babylonians. But I want you to pay attention to the last part of verse 11. Verse 11 reads, they swept past like the wind and are gone, but they are deeply guilty, for their own strength is their God. See, God doesn't say that they're not guilty, that they're righteous. He says they're guilty because they rely on themselves as the only ones that they answer to. No other God. But God's still using them as an instrument. I want you to keep that in mind because Habakkuk doesn't see that until God points him back to it. So verse 12. And this starts, Habakkuk is then following up after God replies to him and says, I'm going to use the Babylonians and we're going to fix what you're asking me about. We're going to stop this evil. It's going to be punished. So in verse 12, O Lord my God, my Holy One, you are eternal. Surely you do not plan to wipe us out. Isn't that what it sounds like the Babylonians are going to do? They're going to punish all evil. They're going to destroy everything. They have no regard for life. They have no regard for people at all. They're cruel, violent, evil. They don't care if they're royal. They don't care if they're good or bad, nothing. Surely you do not plan to wipe us out. O Lord, our rock, you have sent these Babylonians to correct us, to punish us for our many sins. See, he asked that question, surely you do not plan to wipe us out, like it's a rhetorical question. But it's not really rhetorical. He's hoping that God is going to respond to that, and we'll see that later. But do you still see his faith? O Lord, our rock, you have sent these Babylonians to correct us, to punish us for our many sins. 13, but you are pure and cannot stand the sight of evil. Will you wink at their treachery? Should you be silent while the wicked swallow up people more righteous than they? See, there's a question. Are the Jewish people more righteous than these Babylonians that will be sent to punish them? Habakkuk thinks so. Because he says, why would you send someone to punish us when we are more righteous than they are? See, that question about when the vengeance of the Lord comes, it's powerful. And God uses it in a lot of different ways. He uses people. This is one of the examples that we see about how he uses foreign nations to bring his people back to him. That's the goal, right? We know that. That's the goal of why the Lord is sending the Babylonians, is that the Israelites would return to God. That they turn away from this selfishness, from this evil, from their sin. But who is more righteous? The one that believes they're righteous but still living in evil sin, or the one that just doesn't care? Neither one of them are righteous. 14, are we only fish to be caught up and killed? Are we only sea creatures that have no leader? 15, must we be strung up on their hooks and caught in their nets while they rejoice and celebrate? 16, then they will worship their nets and burn incense in front of them. These nets are the gods who have made us rich, they will claim. 17, will you let them get away with this forever? Will they succeed forever in their heartless conquests? You hear that question? How long, Lord, is this going to go on? How long are the Babylonians going to be able to control the Israelites? How long are they going to be punished? Verse 2, chapter 1, I will climb up to my watchtower and stand at my guard post. There I will wait to see what the Lord says and how he will answer my complaint. See, this is in a time that many theologians and historians that study this time period, there's a time between when Habakkuk is probably writing this, and it's not a really long period of time, but it's sometime between the first invasion and the final invasion of Babylon. We forget there are 3 invasions of Babylon into Judah. The first 2, they capture or are very successful and take many captives. The third one, they finally take the entire nation. And somewhere in this is when Habakkuk is experiencing this vision and writing about it. Verse 2. This is amazing to me that we have this recorded down. Here's this question and answer session with the Lord. Habakkuk's got these serious big questions that we still have today. And he's asking God, and God is answering him. Verse 2. Then the Lord said to me, write my answer plainly on tablets, so that a runner can carry the correct message to others. God says, write it down. I'm going to answer you, but write it down. Others need to know this, and they need to know the truth of my response, the truth of my word. See, that's important, because we know God is faithful. But one of the ways that we know he's faithful is things have been recorded, written down. Here he says again, write it plainly on tablets so that a runner can carry the correct message to others. Well, who's the others? Other Israelites, other believers, that they would know this is what God is doing, and this is why God is doing it. Verse 3. This vision is for a future time. It describes the end, and it will be fulfilled. It seems slow in coming. Wait patiently, for it will surely take place. It will not be delayed. Verse 4, look at the proud. They trust in themselves, and their lives are crooked. But the righteous will live by their faithfulness to God. 5, wealth is treacherous, and the arrogant are never at rest. They open their mouths as wide as the grave, and like death, they are never satisfied. What does it mean when he says their mouths are open as wide as the grave? That means their impact is over. They try to swallow up everyone. Because every one of us faces death. Just as these arrogant, evil people open their mouths as wide as the grave. And there's always another. Satan is always looking to devour another, and another, and another, and another. He's never satisfied. And he never will be satisfied. Because where he's looking for satisfaction, it won't come. That satisfaction only comes from the Lord. And he's given up on that. In their greed, they have gathered up many nations and swallowed many people. So you can look at this as he's talking about the Babylonians, but he's not just talking about the Babylonians. But they fit this. They're greedy. They're arrogant. They're proud. They've become this great nation and really raised up to a world power in just about 30, 40 years that it's happened. That's pretty fast for nations to grow up and conquer entire regions. To defeat the two most powerful armies at the time, the Egyptians and the Assyrians. Verse 6, but soon their captives will taunt them. They will mock them, saying, what sorrow awaits you, thieves? Now you will get what you deserve. You will become rich by extortion. But how much longer can this go on? 7, suddenly your debtors will take action. They will turn on you and take all you have while you stand trembling and helpless. 8, because you have plundered many nations, now all their survivors will plunder you. You committed murder throughout the countryside and filled the towns with violence. 9, what sorrow awaits you who build big houses with money gained dishonestly. You believe your wealth will buy security, putting your family's nest far beyond the reach of danger. But by the murders you committed, this is 10, but by the murders you committed, you have shamed your name and forfeited your lives. 11, the very stones in the walls cry out against you, and the beams in the ceilings echo the complaint. 12, what sorrow awaits you who build cities with money gained through murder and corruption. 13, has not the Lord of heaven's armies promised that the wealth of nations will turn to ashes? They work so hard, but all in vain. 14, for as the waters filled the sea, the earth will be filled with an awareness of the glory of the Lord. Yeah, you see this. It's not just talking about the Babylonians. It's talking about end times as well. This is the correction of all that God seeks to do in taking care of evil permanently. See, these are truths of what God does, not just with the Babylonians, not just with the Israelites, but with all people. See, we all answer to God. And we know that the Babylonians will answer to God. We can go back in history and look at what happens to them. They don't stand for generations and generations. They fall too because of their evilness. The Persians, they wrestled control of the Babylonian Empire. You see that? You remember what happens to Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, that's an interesting story, isn't it? Even though the instruments that God uses to bring vengeance still answer to God. The Babylonians are still going to answer to God. Remember, I told you to remember the latter part of verse 11, where he says their pride or their strength that they believe is their God is going to fail them. Verse 12, what sorrow awaits you who build cities with money gained through murder and corruption? Has not the Lord of heaven's armies promised that the wealth of nations will turn to ashes? They work so hard, but all in vain. 14, for as the waters filled the sea, the earth will be filled with an awareness of the glory of God. Yeah. What will that day be like? When the whole world is filled with an awareness of the glory of God. 15, what sorrow awaits you who make your neighbors drunk. You force your cup on them so you can gloat over their shameful nakedness. 16, but soon it will be your turn to be disgraced. Come, drink, and be exposed. Drink from the cup of the Lord's judgment, and all your glory will be turned to shame. 17, you cut down the fortress of Lebanon, the forests of Lebanon. Now you will be cut down. You destroyed the wild animals, so now their terror will be yours. You committed murder throughout the countryside and filled the towns with violence. See, I wonder if he's talking about the Babylonians, or is he talking about the Israelites, or maybe some of both? What have they been guilty of? "18, what good is an idol carved by man, or a cast image that deceives you? How foolish to trust in your own creation, a God that can't even talk." To me, this is kind of interesting because the Lord is talking about an idol that we make idols. People make idols, right? Idols don't make themselves. People lift up things in the place of God. And it's all kinds of things. From wealth, from strength. We've seen how the word was talking about for the Babylonians. It was their strength and their ability to conquer. Their cruelty was all part of that idol. And that they're encouraged by it because they have all this success and they're conquering all these nations. And they're just growing in power and they're growing in wealth. Excuse me. But it won't last. It won't last. The truth of the Lord applies on so many different levels. But we make idols. Idols, they don't lead us. They don't direct us. They don't bring us to any truth. They don't bring us any freedom. They bring nothing but pain, heartache, suffering, and evil. Because idols lead us away from God, always. Away from God. How foolish to trust in your own creation. A God that can't even talk. 19, what sorrow awaits you who say to wooden idols, "Wake up and save us." To speechless stone images you say, "Rise up and teach us." Can an idol tell you what to do? They may be overlaid with gold and silver, but they are lifeless inside. 20, but the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. See, I think this is a conviction on many different levels, and part of it's the conviction of Israel itself and the Israelites in Judah. That as they wrestle with this, they got to confront the idea that they have raised up idols in their own lives. That's the reason the Babylonians are coming. That's the reason that God sends this punishment. It's their unrighteousness. But to me, it's like a taunting challenge. Ask your idols what to do. Ask your idols to rise up and save you. Because what are they going to do? Nothing. The idols that we see today, what power do they have? None. Money, that's an idol for many, many people. And it's always been that one that kind of captures. The reason the word says it's the root of all evil is the love of money. Because it captures you in so many ways. Because you start to covet everything else that everyone has. And it's never enough. If you love money, it'll never be enough. But your money can't bring you any answer. Your money can't buy you another day. Your money can't buy you a place into heaven. Money can't buy you anything for eternity. It may buy you a nice dinner. It may buy you a big fancy house. It may buy you all the stuff of the world. but it's powerless to do anything that matters for your eternity. Now, money has a purpose. Wealth has a purpose, absolutely, to serve the kingdom. No matter how fancy the idol looks, no matter how amazing it might seem, it's got no power to change our lives. See, remember, this is in response to Habakkuk asking the question, Lord, why does evil seem to be winning? Why is there so much violence, evil, hatred, selfishness, sinfulness? Why does all these things seem to be so prevalent in the world around me? We can and often ask that very same question today. But we got to get rid of those idols. We got to get rid of those things that make us feel confident in the plans that we have, the things, the desires that we have, those things that we think we have figured out for our whole life. Oh, we got to rely and trust on the Lord above everything else, because he does speak. He is involved. Remember, Habakkuk said, why do you not listen, Lord? And he says, oh, I don't listen. Now, this is me paraphrasing. I started raising up the Babylonians before you were even on the scene, dude. Before you ever became a part of this, I was already working to fix this. And you say I'm not listening? Oh, I've been involved. I am rising up. You're not going to like what's coming, but I'm going to answer. But don't forget, I am still faithful. I'm going to punish the wicked, but I am still faithful. Those that will turn to me, that promise is still true. That if they will seek him, repent, turn back to God, oh, there's hope for them. There's hope for us. But in the very end of this second chapter, but the Lord is in his holy temple, let all the earth be silent before him. See, for all those questions that we have, all those things that we don't understand, all those things that we can't quite put together, why is this going on? You know, why is there so much evil in the world? I get that asked to me a lot as a pastor. If God's so good, why does he let this stuff happen? It's not a difficult answer why that's true. Because he loves us. And he wanted us to be able to love him. And in order for us to love him, people have to have free will. If we didn't have any choice but to love him, it wouldn't be love. We'd be mindless puppets. But that's not what he wanted. That's not what he created in us. He gave us a freedom. And the part that goes with that freedom, as there's many that do not choose to love God. They choose to love themselves. They choose to love idols. They choose to reject him. That's why there's evil in this world. That's why it seems like it's winning, because they get the limelight. What's that old phrase? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Well, they become the squeaky wheel. But the Lord says he is in his holy temple. Let the earth be silent before him. God is still in control. He was in control as Habakkuk was asking him these questions, as he's having this vision, and he's being told his nation is going to be destroyed because They're not following God. That's pretty hard. But he's also being told by God himself, I am still in control. My promises are still valid. And they will be fulfilled. It's good instruction for us to remember that there is a time for us to be quiet before the Lord. It's okay for us to bring questions to God. It's okay for us to ask him those questions, to wrestle with things. Why does evil seem to be winning? Why do people suffer with these terrible diseases? Why do they have to go through these things? It's okay to ask God. He's not angry because we ask him questions. Not at all. But if we're going to ask him questions, we got to listen for his voice. We got to be quiet before him and let him answer. Because if we just keep talking and talking and talking and talking, what are we going to hear? Just our own voice. God speaks to us in that silence. When we stand before him and listen, he speaks. He speaks. Sometimes it's in words that we hear the voice, that we can have it in like this vision that Habakkuk is having, that's recorded for us because God said, write it down. I want others to know. This wasn't just for Habakkuk, it was for all of God's people. But if we're not quiet before him, we're not going to hear his voice. We're not going to hear him speak. We're not going to hear him give us the encouragement. We're not going to experience his love in the same way. See, love doesn't take words. It takes presence and relationship. And when we stand quietly before God and we hear him speak and we experience his presence, you're going to experience his love. Because that's what his presence brings. Love. In chapter 3, I'm not going to go there today, but in chapter 3, Habakkuk responds with a prayer. And that's the way we are supposed to respond with God. Through prayer, right? Because what's prayer? It's conversation with God. But conversation, I want to remind you, goes both ways. We speak, and then we listen for God to speak. That's all part of prayer. That's the part that we rush through. Because we tell God all these things that are on our heart, and then it's like, okay, you got 15 seconds, answer. That's not how it works. God's speaking to us all the time. All the time. The things that go on in the world around us, the things that happen. We had our barbecue supper last night and had the opportunity to speak with a lot of the people that were here. And it was awesome conversation. I mean, it was like 2 hours that I was in conversation with people I almost forgot to eat. I'm serious. I did. And I'm like, look at my watch. I was like, it's 6:30 already? Oh, I need to get something to eat. And it was such a blessing to be talking with people and just sharing in fellowship. Things that God's doing. It's amazing. I got to share a little bit of my testimony of what God's done in my life with somebody that served in the guard with me that came here from Huntington for our dinner last night because he's seen my Facebook post about the dinner. And he's like, I wanted to come see you. What an awesome thing. And to be able to share with him and him share a little bit about what God's done in his life. Oh, what an encouragement. What a blessing. See, when God wants to speak, we need to listen. We need to pay attention to it. We need to have a mind and a heart that's open to receive what he has to say. It's good for us to ask questions. It's okay for ask questions of God. Habakkuk was a prophet, and he asked a serious, difficult question of God. And God gave him an answer. If you've asked yourself those kind of questions, why does it seem like these crazy evil things go on in the world around us? Why do we live with such violence in our nation? Why does the world seem to be in so much chaos in the recent years? It's because we're living without God in many cases. We've allowed idols to be raised up. Our society here in the United States so idolizes the wrong things. It idolizes people in sports. It puts them to a level beyond anything other than they play a game and they're good at it. That don't mean they know anything about anything except for the game they play. Now they may have great wisdom to share because God's working in their lives too, or can be, but it's not just because of that. We raise up actors and we lift them up and we think we need to hear what they have to say when they're not on a script of a movie. Politicians the same way. They're supposed to be getting paid to tell us what they think and vote for us, but they don't always do that. But we got to be careful of the things that we raise up, because those idols, they don't speak to us. They don't deliver us. They don't help us in difficult times. It doesn't matter what kind of idol it is. It keeps you away from God. And when there's idols in a nation, there's going to be judgment coming. Because these idols, they mean nothing and they're powerless to help us for eternity. So my challenge to you, this challenge, is for you to be honest with yourself. What questions do you have for God? What do you wrestle with way down deep that you have trouble even allowing yourselves to admit that you don't understand or you got questions of God about? I ask myself the same questions. Why does it seem like so many evil people get ahead? Why do we hear story after story of people abusing children? And it's not all far away. Some of it's right here in our own county. And it's horrific. But it's okay to wrestle with those questions. The real question is, how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to honestly ask God? And then listen for his response about what he's doing. Because there's something in spiritual warfare that we have to remember. We're a part of it. We are to be a part of it on God's side. So what it means to be the hands and feet of Jesus is to take the love of God out. That's what defeats evil spirits, the love of God. If you got questions, honestly ask God. And if you're still wrestling with them, get a group of people around you and start praying for an answer. Start lifting up God. Seek it in Scripture. He wants to speak to you. He wants to encourage you. But we have been sent to be the hands and feet. So when you ask that question of God, why is evil winning? Why is there all this bad stuff in the world? The answer just might be I sent you to be a solution to that problem. I sent you to show them my love. I sent you. Oh, yeah. That's heavy, isn't it? Sure is. Because we have that choice every day to take the love of God into the places that we go, to lift people up, to encourage them. But oftentimes we don't. We get too busy. We're too worried about the things that are going on in our own lives, and we just miss those opportunities. I'm not saying that any of you are intentionally doing that, but it happens. You realize that I had so much on my mind. What did that person say? Oh, I should have prayed with that person. Yeah. We are to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So even when you have questions, you can take them before God, but do it in your faith. Trust him. Habakkuk still trusted him. He said, when he asked the second question, he said, I'm going to go to my watchtower and listen for God. Well, what's a watchtower? Why do we put guards up in a high tower? So they can see what's going on. They can survey around, right? So they can watch farther out. Well, he ain't talking about a physical watchtower. He's talking about going to the Lord's presence, being as close to him as he can, and listen for God. And he's still doing it in his faith because he knows God is faithful. So don't allow questions like these big questions. Oh, I don't have it figured out. I don't know. I don't understand. We all wrestle with those things. There are times in our lives we don't understand what's going on, but we don't have to. We can still trust God. I just preached that message a couple of weeks ago. Jesus said, trust God and trust also in me. I have been faithful. And he has. So if you got questions, lift them up to God. Be honest about them. You can talk about those questions. You can share them with one another. It's okay. God is big enough to handle questions. He is. He's not afraid of them. Not at all. To me, I think it wells up his heart with love when we come to him with honest questions. And he can go, I got you. I got you, my child. I'm still faithful. I'll get you through this. And he'll walk us through any difficulty in our life, anything. It doesn't matter. Because he's not an idol that's silent. He's a God that is speaking to us. So answer that challenge. What questions do you have? Ask them to God. But then when you ask them to God, also reiterate your faith. What do you know about God? What has he done in your life? What promises has he given you? What miracles has he done? What transformation has he made in your heart? That's what you back your questions up with. That you remember why he's God. That you remember how you see his love. Then those questions aren't going to pull you away from God. They're going to draw you to him. Lord, I thank you that as we look into your word, that you give us this encouragement to ask questions, that even when it seems like evil's winning in the world around us and we don't understand, Lord, I thank you that you're still here working and moving, that you're not afraid of us asking questions. And that you want to give us answers. Lord, help us to be quiet before you and listen as you send those answers. That we can listen as you encourage and strengthen us and draw us into your presence. thank you for that. I thank you that we don't have to have it all figured out. That we can experience your love and be drawn to it. That we can rely on your faithfulness. Even when we don't understand. I thank you for that. Lord, I ask that you just help each one of us to wrestle with those things that are inside, that we can share them with you and listen for the answer as you draw us deeper into that relationship with you. Lord, bless us for that purpose. That as we gain that encouragement and we gain that understanding and that development of faith